And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. That didn't sound very much like James 1 verse 6. That's because that was Hebrews 11:6. But before we get into James 1:6, we have to understand what it means to believe. What is faith? First thing we need to know is that in the Bible, in the original language, in Greek, the word pistis or pistos in many forms is one word. It is as a noun translated faith, as a verb it is translated to believe, but that big difference in word is just in English. In the original, it's the same word in different forms. Faith, believe, same thing. So what is faith? We see that it's essential. In order to please God, you must have faith, and you must believe he exists, and that he rewards those who seek him. What's the definition of faith? Some people look in the beginning of Hebrews 11 for the definition of faith. It's the wrong place to look. That's a description of how faith affects some other parts of our lives. The definition of faith is found in Romans, in discussing how Abraham is the father of our faith and how his faith teaches us what saving faith is. And there is a passage that defines it. It contains a long parenthetical. That means an explanation in the middle. And with that explanation in the middle, that parenthetical, it's sometimes hard to understand. We get all tangled in the parenthetical. So I'm going to read Romans chapter 4, verses 18 through 22 without the parenthetical. Just the main statement without the explanation that's in the middle, because the explanation is how this applies specifically through Abraham, what Abraham did. So here it is, Romans 4, 18 A and 21 and 22. Against all hope, Abraham in hope believed, being fully persuaded that God had power to do what he had promised. This is why it was credited to him as righteousness. Saving faith is the faith that is credited to us as righteousness, just as Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. And against all hope, Abraham in hope believed, being fully persuaded that God had power to do what he had promised. This is why it was credited to him as righteousness. Now, sometime we'll study that section of verses in detail, and we'll see that the parenthetical talks about the specific details of what might have caused Abraham to doubt, having to do with being old and having no children, and it's details of his situation. But the definition of faith here, against hope, Abraham in hope believed, being fully persuaded. Now there's the definition. Being fully persuaded that God is able to do what he promised. That's the saving faith. God is able to do what he promised. Now let's go to James and see what he says about faith, believing. James 1 verse 6. But when he asks, he must believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. Remember I said that this is going to be passages that get taken out of context? It says right here, but when he asks, he must believe and not doubt, and then talks about how bad it is to doubt. Do you remember what we're talking about here? If you missed yesterday's video, you might go, well, anytime you ask, if you doubt, just forget it, which makes it real hard because all of us wonder if prayer really works. I'm hoping to do a video on a prayer that was according to the will of God and therefore got answered in a most incredible way. Hopefully you'll see it soon. But in the meantime, What is this doubt? But remember that the verse before, let's put it in context. So I'll start at 5. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without fault, and it will be given to him. But when he asks, he must believe and not doubt. This is only talking about praying for wisdom. That's all it's talking about. It's not talking about praying that Aunt Sally would be saved. It's not talking about praying for healing from cancer. It's not talking about the prayer to God of a clean conscience whereby we are saved. It is not talking about that at all. It's talking about the person who lacks wisdom. And we will go farther on this because James goes farther in future days. But right now, we're looking at this one verse. Now, in the first verse of this book, James addresses this to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. That means it is addressed to Jews. Primarily, it was intended for a Jewish audience. So, what would a Jew think reading this passage? It says, he who doubts is like the waves of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. Immediately, the Jewish listener would be reminded of the prophets. And would be reminded of the prophet Isaiah, where it says in chapter 57, verse 20, but the wicked are like the tossing sea, which cannot rest, whose waves cast up mud and mire. So James has said that the person who doubts is tossed to and fro, and he has implicitly said he is like the wicked. Whoa, here you are. You want wisdom. You're asking God. You have a doubt, and now you're like the wicked. What? Let's sort this out. Ooh, looks like we're over time, but we need to sort this out. We can't just leave that hanging right there. So, what's going on here? Faith is on one side. Doubt is on the other. But some places, many places, faith in Scripture, faith is on one side and fear is on the other. Fear and doubt go hand in hand. Fear and doubt and wickedness go hand in hand. So you've got this nasty triangle, fear, doubt, and wickedness. And any of these can interfere with faith. James is kind of lumping them together here, I think. When he asks, he must believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like the wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. But doubts what? Doubts that God will give wisdom. Okay, so I'm wondering, I've got this wisdom problem, okay? Should I go to Padre Island with that busload of people who are going to celebrate spring break? I know how they behave, but I'm going to be a good boy if I go with them. And so I need wisdom. So I ask God and say, God, please give me wisdom. And well, maybe he's not going to answer the prayer, so I'll get to decide. You see where this is going? On the one hand is faith. God rewards. I believe that God rewards those that seek him. I believe that he's able to do what he promised. He's promised here to give me wisdom. I believe he's able to give me wisdom. Why would I doubt? Because I'm afraid of what he might answer. And I'm afraid of what he might answer, and I'm afraid that then I would be expected to do what he answers, and I don't want to do what he answers, or I'm afraid to do what he answers. Therein is the problem, because this is a prayer about wisdom. This is not a concern about doubting whether God is going to heal my infected leg or something like that. This is about the struggle with, will I do what God directs me to do? This doubt is about saying, no, I don't think that God's path will get me where I want. I'm afraid that God's path will hurt. I'm afraid that God's path will be difficult. So I'm not going to commit that I'm going to hear God's answer and that I'm going to commit to do it. I'm afraid to do that. I refuse to do it. So I'm going to ask, but with doubt, with reservations, with hesitation. Do that, and you are like the waves of the sea.